and welcome to another edition of Straight from the Paws. I'm Beverly, and I'm your host today. Gail is off doing some crazy exotic thing. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Miss Cheryl Karen.
Hi, how are you, Beverly?
I'm pretty good. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
I want to tell everybody how we met first. So, as a lot of our studio audience knows, we do a lot of work with pet partners, and we do fundraising with pet partners. We've also had Deb Gerke, Dr. Deb Gerke on our show, and we've had Kathy Salmon on our show. And through that association, we met Cheryl.
Yes.
So we were on the same fundraising committee for pet partners. So that's how we first met. And we've done some wine tastings together and some not so good wine tastings. The wine was good, the events, not so much. So through this, I think what I'm going to be saying to everybody is Cheryl is the first person that we're going to call a rescuer.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever had a rescuer on our show. We've had the veterinarians, we've had groomers, we've had ACO officers, but we've never had a rescuer. So before we actually begin with all of that, why don't you tell our studio audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, being a rescuer is not my profession. I'm actually a licensed social worker, and I have a consulting company, and my partner, who is an occupational health nurse, and I go into businesses and companies. So my rescuing is something I do as a mission, more a mission than a job. And I have always loved animals ever since I was little, and I've always rescued animals. In fact, my mother said when I was about 5 years old, I came in the house with a kitten, and the kitten had a sore eye, and I said, "Mommy, fix it, fix it." So I have been rescuing animals ever since I was little.
But you didn't go into that as a career.
No, I didn't. I had thought about being a veterinarian, and at the time it was very expensive, and the closest school was up in Boston, and it just didn't work out that way. So I guess I'm doing it as my hobby and mission on the side, and I spend more time probably doing that than anything else.
And I thought you were an artist.
And I do that too.
Oh, so you're doing that too. So that's a hobby.
Well,
that's not your career.
The arts and crafts actually help me raise money to rescue animals. So I sell some of the crafts that I do at some craft shows and the artwork, and that money goes aside for the animals, to rescue the animals.
So now we're going to begin. How do we do this rescuing? I think what I want to say first is almost everybody that we've brought onto the show is rescuing animals in some shape or form. But I think you're in a little bit more of an exception. Because we all went into this field differently, and your aspect of this field is so very different. So we'll begin by going over some of these questions that we had written down. It says here that you started rescuing animals from Aruba. So I guess our whole focus is going to be on Aruba, and I hope a lot of our studio audience realizes that that's a beautiful place to go. But there's a big but, isn't there?
There is. The island of Aruba is beautiful, and many, many, many New Englanders and people from across the country go there on vacation. And in fact, it's the most frequently revisited island, so people go there and they go back. But unfortunately, Aruba has a problem of an overpopulation of dogs and cats on the island, which is not uncommon in the Caribbean and some of the Central American countries. And dogs run wild on the streets, many, many dogs. And these dogs and cats as well are homeless, they're starving, they're full of fleas and ticks. And when I went on vacation there many years ago, it just broke my heart. And I was driving down the street one day and saw these two little lumps in the road, which I thought were rocks. And when I got closer, they were moving, and they were tiny puppies. And so you know what? I couldn't leave them there. I couldn't leave them there. So I stopped the car and I picked them up, and I went door to door. Are these your puppies? Are these your puppies? And everybody said no. And I said, well, what am I going to do with them? Do you know where I can take them? And they said no. So I brought the puppies back with me.
Oh, wow, that's how you started.
That's how I started, and I have revisited Aruba for over 25 years, and every time I go down, I bring back either puppies or homeless dogs or kittens. So yeah, it's really a problem there. In Aruba, they don't spay and neuter their dogs. They're pretty much behind us by a couple of generations. 50 years ago or 100 years ago, they didn't spay and neuter dogs here either, and most people don't spay and neuter their dogs there. And so puppies and kittens are born, and you know how they multiply. Dogs can multiply twice a year, and cats can reproduce 3 times a year, and you multiply that, and so there are just many, many unwanted dogs there.
Well, I first would like to say that's an incredible mission that you've put yourself into. And then I would like to ask you, who is your little guest?
This is Minnie. Minnie was rescued in September. Minnie was.
So she's brand new to our area.
She is. She came to us. She was in the kill cages of Aruba. They exterminate between 8,000 and 9,000 dogs and cats a year, and that's their way of population control. And she and her sisters were in the kill cages, and she was infested with fleas and ticks, and she was anemic, and she was malnourished. But she had the sweetest personality, and so did her sisters. And when they looked up at us, it melted our hearts. And so we brought her to the veterinarian, and she had some antibiotics for the anemia, and I spent hours plucking fleas and ticks off of her and gave her a flea bath and put on the flea and tick repellent, and then brought her back to the States. And we have made sure that she's nice and healthy before she gets adopted. And in fact, she was spayed this past Monday, so she goes back into Pet Partners on Monday to have her stitches removed, and then she goes to her new home on the following Saturday.
You mentioned that you took her to a vet.
Yes.
So in Aruba, there are veterinarians.
Yes, there are veterinarians, wonderful veterinarians. And I don't want to mislead people, but there really are a lot of people who do take care of their dogs. And when I go into the veterinarian's office, the place is pretty crowded. And there's 4 or 5 veterinarian offices in Aruba, and they do a wonderful job. And when they see us bringing in the puppies, they will take blood samples to see what their blood levels are, and they check them all out. And most of the puppies who are anemic get 5 days of antibiotic shots. And they check their teeth, and they check them for Giardia and Coccidia, which are it's kind of like
they're viruses, aren't they?
It's a protozoa. It's a one-cell bacteria that grows in the intestines, and we have that here as well. And it's from drinking stagnant water. So when dogs are out in the street, the only thing they can drink out of is puddles, so they're drinking stagnant water. Then we check them for worms, and they get dewormed down there. And I usually keep them with me in Aruba for about 2 weeks, and they're going to the vet daily. And then I bring them back to the veterinarian, and she decides if they're healthy enough to come to the States. There's no rabies in Aruba, so we don't worry about that. And then she provides a health certificate. And if they get the health certificate, then they can come to the States with me.
Now, you said we. So when I think of we, that's obviously going to be a bunch of people that I would think of. So you're not doing this alone. And before you answer that, you're in Aruba 2, 3, 4 weeks. Now, where are you staying? You're not in a hotel.
Okay, many, many times I do it by myself. I go down to Aruba by myself, and I go to the shelter there, and I volunteer my time there. And I have friends in Aruba who are also people who want to rescue. We can talk a little bit more about that as well. But 15 years ago, I decided to buy a little piece of land there and built a little house there. And so now I have some place to bring the dogs to that's a home environment that is totally puppy-proofed. We've got a big fence around the yard, and we have a little pool where we actually take them in the water and take them swimming. I don't take them to the beach because I'm afraid that they will pick up parvo, and I'm afraid that they might pick up sand fleas or something like that. So we get them healthy, and we feed them good food, and we play, and we get them socialized, and then we make arrangements to bring them back to the States.
So one of my questions we have down here is, you mentioned groups in Aruba. So there are rescue groups working with you in Aruba?
You know, years ago when I first started doing this, there were no rescue groups at all. And now, over the past several years, there have been rescue groups starting up. Now, back in 2007, because there were so few rescues, I asked Pet Partners, Debbie Gerke and her staff, if they would go down to Aruba and spay and neuter some animals down there. And we raised some money, and we all went down there and provided free spay and neuter services to 70 dogs and cats. So we spayed and neutered 70 dogs and cats while we were there. And that started people being aware, because we had a lot of publicity about that. It was in the newspaper. I was on their TV. I was on their radio talking about spay and neuter and talking about it really is a public health issue. It's not just an animal issue, it's a public health issue, because if there are dogs that are hungry and scared, and if they have any problems, any medical problems, what if a child approaches a scared, hungry, frightened dog? They might snap. Now, the Aruba dogs have such gentle personalities, but a frightened, hungry, scared dog could hurt a child. So, I did a whole lot of publicity. And since then, one of the organizations I work with rescues street dogs, and also when she goes by houses, if she sees a dog that has a lot of fleas and ticks, she will educate the population there.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's called New Life for Paws.
Is that a shelter in Aruba?
There is a shelter in Aruba, and it's called the Aruba Animal Shelter. But it's a very small shelter, and it's run totally on donations and run by volunteers. And they can really only handle about 35 dogs. Dogs and puppies. And I go there and I bring them some supplies, sometimes collars and leashes, or when I'm down on the island, if somebody's donated any money to help the dogs down there, I bring them food. A lovely group of people, but they can only manage 35. And what they do is that they go into those kill cages and try to save some of the dogs from being exterminated. Now, when people put their dogs or puppies in the kill cages, somebody comes the very next day. There's no possibility of adoption for those dogs that are in the kill cages unless they're saved by the shelter.
And you see puppies in the kill cages?
I've been in the kill cages many times, and one time I went in there and the mother was dead, and someone had hit her in the head, and there were tiny puppies, probably about 2 weeks old, still trying to suckle off their dead mother. So I picked them all up and I looked at them to make sure they were okay, and I just wrapped them in a blanket and brought them back to my house and got the puppy formula and bottle fed them. And it's just like human babies. You have to wake up every 3 hours at night.
Yes, I've done that.
And bottle feed them. And they would whimper and cry. And so, we loved them to pieces, and we fed them, and they were so sweet, and they survived. We brought them to the vet, and they all have wonderful homes.
So when you're bringing them back to the United States, how do you go about doing that? That must be a big process unto itself. And how many do you bring at one time?
Well, things have changed. I used to be able to bring more than one puppy in a carrier, especially if they were little. I could put 2 or 3 puppies in a carrier, and they're just your average a carrier that you would carry a small dog in, and I can put them under the seat. But what you have to do is get the health certificate from the veterinarian, and then you have to book with the airline. And JetBlue, American Airlines, Delta, United all allow puppies or small dogs within the cabin. So these puppies come in the carrier with me, and I put them under the seat. Now they've had some problems, so now it's only 1 puppy allowed per carrier. No problems with mine, but there was a problem with another rescue group that had brought some dogs back to Canada, and they didn't have the proper paperwork, and so the airlines now, to be safe, is only allowing 1 puppy per carrier.
Well, that's hard, because if you've got a litter and you're trying to bring back a litter, so how would you do a litter? Would you use the cargo bin? Do you put them in a cage and put them in the cargo bin?
Well, larger dogs we can put in a special area on certain airlines. Delta and American actually have an area where the crates can go in, they lock it in, and the air pressure is different. But what I usually try to do with puppies is I try to find other people to bring back a puppy in a carrier. So while I'm on the island, I have a few friends who work in hotels, and they ask some of the guests when they're going back. And the last time I came back, there were people who lived in the Massachusetts area. They were coming on the same flight with me back to Boston, and they each carried a puppy.
Now, would that have been when we were having the meetings for the wine taste and your house was filled with puppies?
Yes.
So that's how they all came to be.
Yes.
So that's quite amazing. All right, I have a question here. Do the animals have to stay in quarantine when they get here?
No, because there's no rabies.
Oh, that's right.
Now, that is the biggest issue when an animal comes into the States, is they want to make sure that they have no contagious diseases. And rabies is the biggest fear. And there are no rabies on the island. And that's because they have no raccoons and no squirrels and no foxes and nothing that carries rabies. So it's been rabies-free.
Well, that's a good blessing anyway. So it says here that you have other people helping you. Now, I've never heard of you talk about cats coming in. I don't remember you saying anything about you brought cats. Is that something that you've done?
I have. My love is dogs, but any animal touches my heart. So yes, we have brought some kittens in as well. I've gone into those kill cages, and little kitty faces have stared at me, and I've pulled them out as well. So yes, I've brought back kittens, but primarily it's dogs. In Aruba, cats are a little bit more independent than dogs. They can catch mice, they can catch lizards, and they tend to hide in the grass or hide in bushes, but the dogs are more visible.
I see. Now, does the rule apply for kittens in the cage the same as the dogs? So it's one kitten in a cage?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That must be very difficult then when
It's
you're
hard.
dealing with that. If you have a litter of 4 or 5 kittens, getting 4 or 5 people to bring back one kitten must be also very difficult.
Oh, I scurry and scurry trying to find people to help.
That's amazing. So I'm not Gail, so I have to go over some of the questions because Gail she knows how to do all this and has all the questions in her head ahead of time, and I didn't. So what we were going to talk about is pet partners, and how does pet partners help you with these dogs from Aruba? I know they help you, but I think we could let our studio audience know, how does pet partners help you with the dogs from Aruba?
Pet Partners has been fantastic. As I said, back in 2007, we brought down 2 veterinarians, Debbie Gerke and another veterinarian, and 8 of her staff, and we brought everything we would need to spay and neuter the dogs and cats. And we had suitcases, and I found people in Aruba who housed them, so we didn't have to pay the expense of a hotel. And some of the restaurants and some of the activities down in Aruba donated things for them, like they went on a ride on the Jolly Pirates boat, and we had nice dinners. And so a lot of the people in Aruba were very grateful that they came. And since then, Debbie has really become the expert on the Aruba dogs.
Wow, that's nice
And
to hear.
their name is really Aruba Kanuku dogs. And Debbie has made it a specialty to really know about any problems that these dogs might have. And so she's in tune to any subtle changes. If they have diarrhea, what could that be from? Or if they become lethargic, what could that be from? And veterinarians call her from all over to get information on these Aruba dogs.
Wow.
For example, someone called me and they said, oh, we're going to have our Aruba dog spayed and she seems to be anemic. And so I said the best person to call is Dr. Debbie Gerke, and it was that she was anemic due to what they call tick fever. And it's not contagious, but it's something that the dogs get because they have been exposed to ticks. And you put them on a course of doxycycline for 14 to 30 days, and it goes away.
Well, that's good to hear. And are the breeds they all basically look the same, don't they?
Actually, you know what? They run anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds.
Because I haven't seen any tiny breeds like Maltese-type breeds or Chihuahua-type breeds. They all kind of look like this.
Except there are exceptions.
There are?
Yes. A year ago, I went down there and I found a very skinny, malnourished Maltese. And I checked around to see if anybody owned the dog, and they didn't. So we brought back a Maltese, and that little Maltese
That's living with you,
yeah,
right?
That's living with my mom.
Yes.
Yeah, lives with my mom. And Chihuahuas are very common down there, and Jack Russell Terriers. So you do see the mixes. And there are some pit bull mixes down there as well. And I have a pit bull mix at my house.
Wonder how all these breeds got to be in Aruba in the first place.
Well, you know, it's the same thing as here. People bring in or buy a specialty dog, and as we know, people import dogs from Germany and Belgium and different places, and people brought those dogs into Aruba, and I believe it's probably within the past maybe 30, 40 years, and they've mixed with the native dogs. The original Aruba Kanuku dog, and Kanuku means countryside, and that's in the Papiamento language. And these dogs are considered dogs of the countryside. But they were originally brought in probably in the 16th century by the Portuguese slave traders. And when they did DNA testing on the Aruba dogs, they relate back to the Portuguese Pendango.
Oh, that's where the look is. It's that Pendango look. And we do get a lot of those at Forever Paws.
Yes.
That breed of Pendango. And that they do represent that. They have that look about them.
They do.
And the Pendango is such a narrow, skinny type of a dog. They're hunters.
Yes, they are. They're very swift. They love to climb. They'll climb over rocks, and they're good at following prey. One of my other dogs at home listens and listens in the summertime, and under the leaves, if there's a mole, she can hear it.
Oh, wow.
And
that's
she
amazing.
listens,
Look
and
at
then
her.
she
She's so
drops her
cute.
nose right in there, and she'll come up with it. And I say, drop it, and she does.
Good training, good
Yes.
training. I understand from our last fundraising committee meeting that there's going to be quite a process of veterinarians going down to Aruba recently. Is that happened, or is it going to be happening?
It's going to be happening. Money was raised by an organization called Aruba Flight Volunteers. Those are people who volunteer to transport animals, and it's with a company called Animal Balance. So they're going to be sending down veterinarians, and we are pulling together some surgical supplies, and I'm sending that down. Volunteers who happen to work in operating rooms in the local hospitals have been donating supplies. So we're bringing down surgical drapes, we're bringing down IV tubing, surgical gloves, and the goal is to spay and neuter anywhere between 400 and 500 animals.
That's a lot of animals.
Yes, it
How
is.
long do they plan on being there?
They're planning on being there for a week, and then we have more veterinarians coming in from Holland 2 weeks after.
And who coordinated all of that?
All volunteers.
Wow, that's
All
quite
volunteers.
amazing. All right, it says here, do you help any other animals or just the animals in Aruba? So that would mean, like, are you working with other shelters? But I think I can answer that question. You're not. You're basically, you put all your energy into the Aruba dogs.
No, Beverly,
That's
I don't.
not true?
You know what?
Wow.
I'm a citizen of the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Here I am thinking we're focusing just on Aruba, but you're doing more than that.
Yes, you know, and people ask me, why do you bring animals from Aruba when we have so many animals in need here? You know, there are animals all over the world that need help. I work with an organization in Connecticut called the Little Black Dog Rescue,
Oh, that
and
sounds so
they
cute.
rescue dogs from the South that are going to be put down. For some reason, black dogs are not the most desirable dogs, and so she brings them from the South, and I do a lot of the home visits to check on homes if they're going to be adopted in this area. I also go to the Bahamas and donate supplies to the Bahamas Animal Humane Society there. And I help with Forever Paws, and I
Yeah.
help with Pet Partners. So again, it's just, you know, it's a mission in life that makes me feel really good about helping the animals.
That's why when we started the show off today, I said that you were a rescuer. And you were the first rescuer, basically, that we've had on the show. And that's really your mission, is you are a rescuer. Wherever you go, you're rescuing. That's quite an amazing story. I want to ask you, is there any other way you help animals from Aruba? But obviously, I think we already answered that question too. And we already asked about the temperament of the dogs from Aruba. So how many dogs do you currently have in your own home?
Let me go into a little bit further about the temperament. Yeah, you know, I have brought back over 200 dogs in the past 10 years, and each and every one of them is very sweet and lovable, and that's all they look for, is they want to be loved. They're very smart. You can train them, you can teach them things. They want to please. I haven't had any that have been aggressive toward people at all. A little nervous, a little shy.
Yes, I noticed that Mia was a little bit nervous.
Yeah, but once they get to know you, they just want to be next to you. They want to be touching you. They want to be looking in your eyes. They're really very sweet. But they are very nervous at the beginning. I brought one home in November who had been living on the streets, and she stayed under my kitchen table for 2 weeks before she decided to come out. And now she's happy, and she jumps
cute.
and she plays with the other dogs. I currently have 3 dogs that are mine at my house, and I have 2 fosters. This one has a home. We're looking for a home for another. But just before Christmas, I had 9 because I had 4 puppies and I had these 5. But we work out a system where the puppies get to go out, and I have one dog that acts like a mother. As soon as the puppies come in, she kind of corrals them and keeps them in line and watches them. And I have a little playpen.
I'm going to have to close our show.
Oh my goodness, we've had such a wonderful time
I told you the time would go
talking.
by so fast.
It did, yes it did.
So at this time, I'd like to say thank you to our studio audience, and I'd like to say thank you to Miss Cheryl Karen for all that she's doing. And thank you again for watching our show, Straight from the Paws.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.